I got to the point though where I said, okay, is it more important to tell the truth or is it more important to be loved? Who am I going to help by being loved? But I could help a whole lot of people by telling the truth.
If you're going to embrace your journey to greatness, you will have to be willing to face things no one has faced before you. Don't get me wrong, in life, everyone has adversity. Everyone will deal with something that seems to want to stop them from reaching destiny. But the truth is that if you're going to really walk into the fullness of your greatness, at some point in your journey, you will have to become a pioneer or a trendsetter. You'll have to parent in a way that you never saw mama and daddy parent. You'll need to be a leader like you haven't seen anyone else lead. You'll have to be willing to embrace parts of your journey that you haven't seen before. And it can be scary, it can be intimidating. And if you embrace it, it can also be pivotal, not just for your journey, but for the journeys of others who come after you. That's the beauty of a trendsetter. That is the beauty of a pioneer. That you are setting the pace so that someone else can race after your journey is done. Today, I'm excited because the individual that I have brought on is someone who literally is just blazing a trail in so many areas of life. She is an inspiration, a motivation, someone when you hear what she's done, you think to yourself, what is it that I was put on the earth to do? And how do I truly embrace it the way that she has? And so today I'm excited to bring on my guest, Dr. Tameka Ellington, to Hope Rising. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm super excited to be here. Let's have some amazing conversation.
Yes. Now you guys don't know this, but that was like take 3 at the beginning of this, right? And the reason I wanted to do it again, right? I don't mind like bringing back the curtain so people can hear this, is because I want people to understand the level of guests that I have on so that they open up their ears and open up their hearts to what they're about to receive.
Uh,
So, can you tell everybody, like, when you introduce yourself to someone, who do you say that you are?
Initially, what I'll say is I'm a revolutionary.
Mm.
I'm a first generation revolutionary, meaning that I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I'm actually a first generation high school graduate. Neither my mom or my dad graduated from high school. I was raised by teenage parents. My mom and dad, they were 16 when they had me,
Wow.
17 when they had my brother, and then 21 when they had my sister. I was raised in the inner city of Cleveland in poverty, drugs all around me, teenage pregnancy, violence all around me. I used to have to carry weapons to school, just because of, fighting and that kind of thing, but I was able to give myself a different life because I saw that I deserved a different life.
Mm.
I didn't want the same things that I saw around me. I was, tired of all of the on guard drama and all those things, that come along with living in, a violent area. But I just wanted a different life. And so I was not afraid to think in a different way. I'm still, unfortunately, the only person in my family to get a college degree. And because of that, it makes me revolutionary, but it also makes me a black sheep in my family.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
very different than everybody else. And so
Right.
they look at me in a different way. But that's not a, it's not a bad thing. I try my best to set an example, for those people in my family and those around me. But I also, uh, when people ask me about who I am, I'm a vessel of the Creator. I'm a
Mhm.
vessel of the Creator, and I do everything that I possibly can to live out and be the best version of myself and the best representation of all the gifts that I was given. And so I try my best not to live in fear.
Mm.
I try my best to to do all those things that I'm asked to do. When spirit is talking to you and asking you to do certain things, I try my best to do those things, even if it is scary.
Mm.
And so, it's helped me evolve my life to the person that I am today, and I'm continually evolving and trying to keep my ears open to be able to listen to what guidance the Creator has for me. But yeah,
Mm.
I'm a revolutionary, but I'm trying to do it in a fearless way.
Here's the interesting thing. When my team and I sit down and look at our analytics, we find that the chances are that you, yes, I'm actually talking about you right now, that you are not subscribed to this channel. And so I just wanted to jump on and give you an official invitation. Would you please join us in subscribing to the channel? I'm so excited about the upcoming interviews that we have, some tremendous people, and I want to make sure that you don't miss it. This is going to give you an opportunity to get weekly inspiration that could take your leadership, take your organization, take your personal life to the next level. So would you go ahead and subscribe? And then don't keep this just to yourself. Would you share this episode with a friend, a family member, a coworker, an employee, someone who needs this weekly information? Let's get you into this week's episode. In a fearless way. Amazing. So this journey is funny because I really want to like unpack like 20 things that you just said, and I'm probably going to try to circle around to at least a couple of them, but I want to make sure everybody really understands from a professional standpoint who they're listening to as you've told that story. So you trailblazed that you were the first one to go to high school, then the first one to go to college. Eventually, we just called you Dr. Tameka, right? So
Yes.
you eventually went all the way, got your doctorate. You are now literally also a pioneer when it comes to what you've done on an administrative level
Yeah.
as an author of 5 books, as a speaker and a clinician, and so many other things. So, can you take everybody through? Can you explain to everyone, who you are professionally
Yeah.
at this juncture in your life?
Yeah. I'm still someone who, tries my best to live fearlessly, in that I've always prided myself on, when in a professional manner, when I get to a point in my life where I'm not satisfied,
Mm-hmm.
then I go to the next step. Even if it may take me a little bit of time to do that, but the next step is always in my vision, my fore vision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I started off my career as actually a fashion designer. So my background is in fashion. I served in the fashion industry for several years. And while I was working there, was enjoying what I was doing, but I had a sense of emptiness. There was something that was missing. I was making great product, doing what I was trained to do. I was a great designer, but I just felt like I wasn't contributing anything to the universe. And I don't know, like in my 20s, like I didn't know what that was. I just knew that I felt empty. And so something spoke to me and said, okay, well, go back to school and get a master's degree. Went back to school, got my master's degree. Went back into the fashion industry after that, thinking, okay, well, now that I have a master's, maybe, I'll feel like I have a little bit more purpose in life. But I went back into the industry, and that emptiness still kept up with me. God was, slowly trying to lead me in the direction that I was supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so, something spoke to me and said, well, maybe you need to teach all the things that you have learned.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started teaching part time in the School of Fashion and decided to go and get a PhD. I knew that if I wanted to become a professor, I couldn't go about it the same way that others had gone about it. In
Mm-hmm.
fashion, you don't have to have a PhD to be a professor. You can have a master's of fine arts to be a professor in fashion, just like in any other art field.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew as a Black woman, I had to
Mm.
have more.
Go ahead, tell the truth.
Okay. So I decided to go ahead and get my PhD, finished up all my coursework and all that. And by the time I finished my coursework, I was what academia calls ABD. ABD is all but dissertation.
Uh huh.
Okay, so I'm ABD at this point, and the fashion school has a full-time job open, and I decided that I was going to apply. So there's different levels in academia. So there's a part-time instructor, a full-time instructor, and then there's the professor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was just applying for a full-time instructor's role. I knew I was qualified for the requirements where you had to have a master's degree, you had to have some years experience in fashion, which I had all of that. Plus, I was ABD, almost
Mhm.
done with my PhD. Well, I applied for a job at the Kent State University Fashion School, and got denied for a job. Okay.
Mhm.
After the first time of getting denied, I said, okay, well, maybe this is a sign for me to just keep moving towards finishing up my doctorate. A couple months later, another job became open, and I decided to apply for that one because I was also qualified for that one. I got turned down again a second time. Third job came open a couple months later. By this time, I was just about finished, with everything with my PhD. And I applied for the third time and got denied a third time for a
Mm.
job. And because I was working there part time, I saw all the people that they had hired instead of hiring me. And they were all white women who had less education than I did. And at one point, they actually passed me up for somebody who only had a bachelor's degree
Mm.
while I was almost done with my PhD. And so, being the fighter that I am, I said, something has to happen here. So I did what I felt like I needed to do. And I went and I applied to the Title IX department on our campus and filed for an affirmative action case against the
Mm.
fashion school.
Wow.
Yeah. And so after I filed that affirmative action case, they gave me a job.
Mm.
So going into that space in that way was quite difficult. I'm sure you can probably understand how difficult that was.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah. And then once I finished my PhD, I actually went to the department chair at the time. Because remember, I'm only an instructor at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
did get the full time instructor's role, but I had to go about it, you know, with filing the affirmative action complaint. And so once I finished my PhD, and remember, I was saying, when you're a fashion designer, you don't have to have a PhD, right?
Right.
You only have
Right.
to have a master's of fine arts. So
Mm.
I knew I was more than qualified
Mm-hmm.
to be in the department, right? So I go to the department chair and I tell him, I said, the fashion school has never had a Black professor of fashion. I think it's time. Don't you think it's time? And he said, I do think it's time. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, he came back and announced to my colleagues that I was going to be the newest addition to the school as a professor now of fashion,
Mm.
and all hell broke loose. All hell
Mm.
broke loose. They were not happy about the fact that I was coming in. And there were so many issues that came up, and it felt like a battle every day that I was there.
Mm.
Um, I,
I wanna stop you right here in the story.
yeah,
I
please.
promise I'm gonna
Yeah,
let you finish
yeah,
because everybody needs to hear how far you went after that because that was not the ceiling for you at all,
absolutely not. Yeah.
right? Sometimes hell has to break loose for heaven to be released, and
Heck
so
yeah. Oh my
you
God. Yes.
so you have been on this journey since you were a little girl. I feel like we needed to take you all the way there so that everybody could hear how the question I'm going to ask next parallels. You said something at the very beginning of the interview, and I was just like, sheesh, we need to unpack that. But where you are right now in your story, the question almost is more powerful. You said, when I was a little girl, I looked around at my surroundings and I felt like I deserved better.
Mhm.
Many people, when they look at their surroundings, they look around and they feel like they deserve what they're getting. This is the
Mhm.
ceiling that I will never break
Mhm.
through. And then their life becomes a constant struggle to stay where they are.
Mhm.
Self sabotage,
Yep.
breaking yourself down, right? And now here you are, a grown woman, young woman, and and I know a lot more of your story than you've shared so far. So I know some of the other things you've had to fight for. But here's the reality. Now you're a young woman and they're already letting you teach. Right? You're already doing things that are supposed to be like, hey, you should just be proud of yourself.
Mhm.
And you felt like you deserved something more. And it wasn't a deserving of like entitlement or being spoiled or that type of deserving. It was something else that you were seeing. What else were you seeing that showed you I deserve to have a seat at this table.
I'm a very spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
And God kept whispering to me. He kept saying, "You deserve to be here."
Mm.
He kept saying to me, "I gave you the gifts and the talents
Mm.
that you have. It's your responsibility to show off those gifts and those talents. Um, you're supposed to be the first. I put you here so that you can be the first."
Mm.
And so when I had the audacity to go to the director and tell him, "Hey, the fashion school's never had a Black professor. It's time. Don't you think it's time?" For me to have the audacity, that was nothing but God pushing me and whispering in my ear. And he just wouldn't let me alone
Mm-hmm.
until I did what it was I needed to do. And so once I actually got the role of assistant professor
Mm-hmm.
in the way in which I got it, I knew that my colleagues were very upset about me being in the department. I knew that they were watching me. I knew that they were waiting for me to mess up. And there's this sense of imposter syndrome that just washed over me.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first 2 years, while I was serving as assistant professor, I was sitting as a stagnant individual
Mm.
because I was nervous, because I was suffering from imposter syndrome, because I allowed what they said about me to get into my mind and make me believe that, yeah, they said that I wasn't talented enough to be in this department. The fashion school at Kent State University is one of the top fashion schools in the nation.
Yes, it is.
And in order to be in that space, you have to have some talent. Absolutely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they kept telling me that I wasn't talented enough to be in the school, that I didn't deserve to be there, that I wasn't a good fit, is what they would say. I
let's
wasn't a
let's let's stay there. Let's stay there. Let's stay there
Yeah, yeah,
because there is somebody who's listening today and they're literally walking your journey, right?
yeah.
There's somebody who's listening, they're watching and they're thinking, I have worked my butt off to get to a place and now I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. I'm
Mhm,
qualified to be here. If nothing else, I'm qualified because God said. And
mhm.
yet I feel unworthy.
Yeah.
How did you find the perseverance and the grit within yourself and within your faith to stick with it long enough to even like get to where you are now, right? Because there's a lot of people who don't believe that imposter syndrome is real till it hits them, and then it makes them quit. It
Yeah.
makes them regress
Yep.
and give up.
Yep.
How did you stick with it?
You know what it was? And I'm just going to be truthfully honest with you. There was a couple things happening. I knew I didn't want to go back into the fashion industry per se. Like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to work back in the industry. I knew that. I knew that I wanted to do fashion. I knew that I loved fashion. And I felt like this was the only way that I could do it in the way that I wanted to do it. Going back in the industry wasn't an option for me. Um, and then another thing was I had just gotten married. My then husband was locked into the area that we were living in. And I knew that I wasn't able to be mobile. So I couldn't just pick up and move to go to another state.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was another thing. So it's like I have this situation here where I know I'm supposed to be here. They're trying to block me from what it is I'm supposed to be doing. I know that I can't physically get up and move. And so it forced me to fight.
Mm. It forced you to grow,
It did.
right?
Absolutely. It did. It did. Absolutely it did. It
There's
forced
there's
me.
there's times in life where God will allow you to feel like you're stuck in a place where you can't
Absolutely.
move this way or that way. You can't go back to where you were, but you're not ready to go where you're supposed to be going. And you
Mhm.
don't have anyone over here giving you space, but there's absolutely no one over there giving you space either. And God says, well, I guess it's time for you to grow up.
Mhm.
Right. And
Yep.
so either you're going to shrink down in that moment and back away from what it is that is an opportunity sitting in front of you, or you grasp hold of the opportunity to mature
Yeah.
and to embrace who you are. And
Absolutely.
there's one other theme I want to talk about right where we're at in this story, because I'm sure that this part doesn't stop at this part. You said that because of who you've been in your journey, that in your family you've often felt like a black sheep.
Oh, yeah.
And here you are at this part of your journey in your faculty as a black sheep. And when
Absolutely.
I think about a black sheep, you talked about I was thinking about Moses as you were talking earlier, right?
Hmm.
Right. So when you were saying, God kept whispering to me, I need you to go do a thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking about him talking to Moses saying,
Oh,
I need
yeah.
you to go doing a thing,
Yep.
which by the way is one of the times that we see imposter syndrome in scripture, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? And so he becomes a black sheep. Like, who are
Yeah.
you to come over here and tell us what we need to do? And so sometimes the black sheep is actually the Lord's chosen sheep. That's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. If you embrace what it can mean, not just being, just on the fringes of society, but if you embrace being a leader who doesn't fit in.
Yeah.
That's why I stopped you, because you were like, I didn't
Yeah.
fit in, because you weren't supposed to fit in. You were
Yep.
supposed to stand out.
Absolutely.
So how did you get to the point of embracing the journey of standing out? Because I know now that's what you tell everybody to do. So somehow you grew into
Hmm.
that. How did you get there?
Yep. After the 2 years of being a assistant professor and sitting in stagnation, I remember walking into the building. Every time I would walk into that building, I would feel like there was like this heavy burden just as soon as I walked through the door. I
Mm,
had just a heavy burden on my body. I would feel like every time I walked through the door, I had to put on all this stuff, like these shields. I had to, you know, protect myself every time I walked into the building. I remember one day I was sitting at my desk and it just hit me. God was like, why do you care so much
mm,
about what these people say? I put you here for a reason. What they say have absolutely nothing to do with the dream, with the reasoning. The significance for you being here has absolutely nothing to do with anybody else.
mm,
Why do you care what these people say? And once I realized, you know what? I don't care. What they have to say does not matter in the grand scheme of all of these things. Who am I pleasing?
mm,
I'm pleasing my creator and I'm pleasing myself. God was like, "You I gave you all of these talents. You better show these talents before I take them away from you."
mm,
And so after that 2 years of being stagnant and having that conversation with God, I'm telling you, I was on fire. I was on
mm,
fire. I'm telling you, I became the top researcher, the top designer in that department, was able to go around the world, showing my design work and talking about my research. I did so many amazing things for the university that after I was able to get tenure and promotion, immediately after that, I was asked to serve as assistant dean.
wow. Unbelievable.
And so, what was amazing about it was that after I got into the role of assistant dean, and let me tell you what was really interesting about that.
Hmm.
This whole time, me and God are having this conversation the whole time, right?
Hmm.
And so, after I got associate professor, God was like, "You need to quit. It's time for you to leave the university."
Yep.
I said, "No, I don't want to leave yet. I'm doing good. This is feeling good, And
Hmm.
I said, "Okay, God, I'll leave, but I want to get a chance to serve as a dean before I leave." I'm not even lying to you. A month later, the dean's office was calling me.
Mm.
My dean, he reached out to me. He said, "Can I take you to breakfast?" I said, "Can you take me to breakfast? Like what did I do? Like I'm thinking I'm in trouble." And he's like, "Yeah, I just want to take you to get some coffee or something. Let's go." So I get over there with him. We started talking, and he said, "How would you feel about serving as my assistant dean?" And only thing I could do was just smile because God and I had just had this conversation a month ago.
Hmm.
And I told him I wasn't going to leave until I had the opportunity to serve as dean.
Hmm.
So he's basically like, "This is your opportunity right now. You do this, and then you need to go do what I asked you to do."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I got into the dean's role. My colleagues, if I was a fly on the wall the day that they told them, my God, they were
Mm.
like in shock. And one of them even had the nerve to come up and ask me, "So, how did you get that job?" There
Wow.
wasn't an opening for that job. I don't remember seeing an opening for that job. I said, I was invited.
Mm.
I was invited to be the
Mm.
assistant dean. That's how I got the job. I was invited.
Mhm. Invited by something much greater than you and I.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so once I got into the role, it was amazing because now all of those people in my department that didn't want me there, that was fighting against me like the whole time while I was, trying to make my way, now they were my subordinates. They had to listen to me.
Mm.
That was amazing.
And what
That
is more amazing to me, right, is that from there you have been on a much longer journey, right?
mhm.
And now as I'm sitting to you, I know you just put out a new book. You
Yeah.
are touring the country.
Yeah.
Are you internationally speaking with this book?
Yeah, actually,
Right?
I was invited to come to Nova Scotia.
Uh-huh.
And then just a gentleman that I've been working with just invited me to come to South Africa. So there's an opportunity. I'm hoping that will come up in fall for me
Mm.
to go to South Africa.
And
So
and who was the publisher of your fifth book? This is your most recent one, your fifth book. Who published the book?
Kent State University Press.
One more time.
Kent State University
Won't he
Press.
do it? Okay, so
Well, he
now
will. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just wanted everybody to hear that, right, and get that all at the same time to
Yeah.
understand this perspective.
Yep.
That it's been several years since that part of the journey that you've been explaining to us, right?
Hmm.
It's just pivotal. And now not only have you grown in these amazing ways, but somebody could be listening and thinking, well, she's trashing the university that she used to be at. No, I'm telling the truth about my story, and my story
Absolutely.
is being elevated by the university
Absolutely.
the story is about because
Absolutely.
they understand what happened.
Absolutely. 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 And actually, what's beautiful about my journey is that in 2021, Kent State University named me a trailblazer.
Mm, I
The
bet they did.
university named me. I was in the same ranks with people such as there was a gentleman who was the very first Black professor ever at the university. His name was Dr. Oscar
Dr.
Ritchie.
Oscar Ritchie. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you that I went to Kent State University as well.
Yeah. So
So,
Dr. Oscar Ritchie, during that moment when they were announcing all of the trailblazers, they
Mhm.
named me alongside Dr. Oscar Ritchie.
Amen. And the reason that his name is important to me is because if Dr. Oscar Ritchie didn't exist, I wouldn't have been able to go to college the way that I did. So I
Hmm.
was a Dr. Oscar Ritchie scholar
Scholar,
and
yes.
had a scholarship throughout school because of his trailblazing and then what his legacy has now done for a whole bunch of other individuals like us.
Absolutely.
So yes, so
And speaking of
mm.
that, I actually established a scholarship at Kent State.
Oh
And
my
so,
goodness.
yes, so I have the Ellington Foundation Scholarship for
Come
Fashion
on,
Design.
Ellington Foundation. Come on. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I get excited. Wow.
Yeah. So now the students, the Black students, and specifically, thank God for my fighting spirit. Thank
Mm,
God for my fighting spirit because I'm telling you, people will try to manipulate you in any way that they can.
mm,
And so when I was in the process of establishing that scholarship, I told them, I said, this scholarship needs to be for a student of color in the fashion design department, blah, blah, blah. They were like, well, we really can't guarantee that your money's going to go to a student of color. I said, well, you know what? If you want my money, you will guarantee that my money's going to go to a student of color. Because if
mm,
it won't, and I find out a white student got my money, there's gonna be hell to pay.
mm.
So even if you're telling me that you can't guarantee it, my money better go to somebody who's a student of color.
And I want everybody to hear the heart behind that because a person can listen and they can miss it. You in that moment are fighting for little Tameka. The
Absolutely.
little girl who lives in the
Absolutely.
hood, whose mama and
Absolutely.
daddy didn't go to high school and didn't go to
Absolutely.
college and
Yep.
don't have the money. And you are
Absolutely.
saying there's another me. And I want to
Absolutely.
make sure the next me, again, I believe started this entire conversation by saying sometimes you must blaze a trail for someone who comes after you. And sometimes people can miss. Somebody has to stand for little Tameka.
Absolutely.
Why not you?
Yep.
Wow. So now you are on this mission to help the world have an understanding of what it is to be a Black woman
Yeah.
with Black hair.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about this new journey that you're on, this new book that now has you speaking internationally? Tell us a little bit about it.
You know, this journey it's been a journey. It has
Mm,
really been a journey. When I decided to leave the university in 2021, I left August 2021. I was walking away from a six-figure salary,
mm,
security, and all the things. I had a job that most people would die to have. And God told me it was time to go.
mm,
And so I had to leave. Um, when I first started my business, I started a business called First Generation Revolutionaries
mm,
because I thought that my mission was to serve first generation students and do speaking engagements, do empowerment things, like, all of the things. I thought that I was supposed to be geared towards first gen students,
mhm,
which I still do a lot of work for first gen students. Um, but thank God for mentors and for people who see you before you see yourself.
mm,
I had this one mentor of mine. She's been my mentor now for years, at least a decade now. She's helped me guide myself through the whole process. She's an amazing scholar, internationally renowned psychologist. And so she and I, after I left, we had lunch. She wanted to just check up on me to see how it's doing. And so she was like, "So how's everything going with the business? What are you doing? And, how's it going?" And I was explaining to her what I was working on and all this stuff. And while I'm talking to her, she's just kind of shaking her head at me. And I was like, "Well, why are you looking at me and why are you shaking your head?" She was like, "Well, because I just don't understand why you're not living in your purpose."
mm,
And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She was like, "You're doing the work for first generation students. Yeah, that's great." She said, "But there's so many other people out there that's doing that same work." She said, "What makes you different and what makes you special than anybody else doing first generation work for students?" And she kind of tripped me up. And
mhm,
I gave her some answer, but she still, as I gave her the answer, she's looking at me and she's shaking her head. And she was like, "Tameka," she said, "you spent the last 15, 20 years of your career as a researcher studying Black culture and beauty. You've written several articles, you've done exhibitions, you've done all these other things surrounding this research. Why are you not using this as your speaking platform?" And before I could even say and give my reasoning why, she said, "Oh, I know why." She said, "Because Kent State University did such a number on you
mm,
and traumatized you so much that anything that you had in relation to the university, you wanted to leave it behind."
mm,
She said, "But the research that you did doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. All the work that you did does not belong to Kent State University. It belongs to you."
Cut.
Okay, that's a wrap.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Jody Eric Matthews, the director of King of the Block. And I just want to say, if it's Monday, I'm watching Hope Rising with Maurice Martin.
mm. Let's stay there. I saw when you started talking about this subject, the emotion. So many people when they go through life, we've almost been trained that if life has really rocked you, shut that part of yourself down,
Yeah,
get hard, and leave it behind.
yeah,
And what you and I both know is that the real way that we have to interact with those moments is to deal with them,
Yeah.
heal from them, and take the new strength and the wisdom that has come from those hard times. So now you sit down in a room with a mentor
Yeah.
and she shows you you.
Yep.
What did that do for you on the inside to hear there's a greater mission?
I already knew it. I already knew that there was,
Mm,
but I was too afraid to step into it.
mm.
She told me, she said, "You know what?" She said, "You know who you are?" I said, "Who?" She said, "You're Jonah."
Ooh.
She said, "You're running." She said, "You're in the whale. It's time for you to come out of the whale."
Mm, come on.
I said, "Okay." And
Sheesh.
she got me good. She got
She
me
sure
good.
did.
She
She would
got
have
me
got me
good.
too with that one. Lord have
She
mercy.
got me good. And so I said, "Okay, I'm going to come out of the whale." And what coming out of the whale meant was that now all of this research and thing that I was really passionate about, because I'm so passionate about Black beauty, culture, cultural consciousness. I'm so passionate about it. It's everything to me.
Mm,
And when I realized, I knew that it was already something I was supposed to be doing, because she wasn't the first person that told me that.
mm.
I had other people ask me, like, just in passing, like, "Well, why are you not using that as your speaking platform?" But then I would say, "Oh, well, I just love first generation students. I just blah, 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 blah." Just like, you know, not knowing that somebody that I really cared about, somebody that I really respected, once she told me
Mhm.
that it was going to hit different.
Yeah, it
It
sure
was going to
did.
hit different.
It sure
And
did.
and I had already known that that was what I was supposed to be doing, but I was afraid. And the reason why I was afraid is because so many of us Black people are so brainwashed that we hate hearing the truth, and
Mm,
we demonize anybody that comes to us with the truth.
mhm,
Um, I didn't want to be seen as a radical. I didn't want to be demonized. And so, as my mentor, as she talked to me about this, her name is Dr. Angela Neal Barnett. I love you, Dr. Angela. Um, as she told me this, I was slowly coming out
mm,
of the whale. So I reached out to another mentor of mine who I respect to the utmost. He's actually a Ghanaian chief.
mm.
And I called him. He was actually in Ghana at the time. I called him. I said, "This is what I'm thinking about doing." I said, I know that this is what I need to do, but I was like, I don't want people to think that I'm a radical. He told me, he said, "You are already a radical." He's like, "You're just an undercover radical."
Wow.
He said, "It's time for you to come out." He said, "You're undercover. You're
Mm,
already a radical.
mm.
You're just an undercover radical."
Let's
And
let's
some,
talk about what does that mean? Because there are a lot of people in life who are looked at as radicals in one season of life and then are embraced and championed in another season, right? I'm thinking about, your Muhammad Ali's of the world and so many other
mhm,
amazing people.
yeah,
You could talk about Jesus if you wanted to. There's a
yeah,
lot of people you could talk about who are looked at as radicals.
yeah.
And then later on, we tell the story differently.
Mm-hmm,
What did that
mm-hmm.
word radical mean to you? Why did you want to push away from that word and that title?
Well, I'm a human being, and I'm a human being who wants to be loved,
Mm,
you know? And a lot of times, people who are radicals, people have a hard time loving them. And I wanted to be loved. Um, I got to the point, though, where I said, "Okay, is it more important to tell the truth, or is it more important to be loved? Who am I going to help by being loved?
mm.
But I can help a whole lot of people by telling the truth."
And one of the things that I hear, because I got a chance, I'm one of these people when I bring you on, I watch bunch of different interviews, and I watched you do your TED Talk. P.S. Everybody go watch her TED Talk. There's a whole bunch of stuff that she has online. She's got 5 books. Go read them. I mean, just like she has a ton. Part of what I see you doing right now is telling people, if you're going to fight for acceptance, be the authentic version of you who is accepted.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So if I want to be loved, let me make sure you love the real me, not my representative.
Absolutely. And so now if you go to my website today,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing you're going to see is going to say, be confident,
Mm-hmm.
be authentic, be beautiful.
Take me through those three phrases. Why are those 3 things important to you?
Because confidence, when you exude confidence, that's your way of saying to the world that I'm fearless and I'm going to go and do this regardless. Right? When you're authentic, you're showing up as exactly who the creator made you to be, not anybody else. Not anybody else. You're not sugarcoating who you are. You're not putting a blanket over who you are. You're not, dumbing yourself down for anybody, because I did that for a long time too. For my family, the people that I knew who had a hard time with the fact that I was an excellent person, I dumbed myself down so that they could love me. But I got to a point in my life where I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. God was like, why are you covering yourself up for these folks? Everything that I gave you, you need to show it off. You need to show it off. So be confident, be authentically you, and just be your beautiful self. And so my motto is, on the other side of fear is your beautiful confidence.
On the other side of fear
Is
is
your
your beautiful confidence.
It's your beautiful confidence.
Can we distinguish the difference between beautiful confidence and ugly confidence?
The reason why I say beautiful confidence is because it's a confidence that people can see, but you can feel. You feel so good about yourself when you show up as who you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
It feels so good to show up as who I am. As soon as people see me, they know exactly what they're getting. There's no question about what they're going to get when they see me.
I think the other thing that's beautiful about your confidence, because when I met you, I don't even know if you remember the conversation we had, but you were speaking life to me in a lobby. Actually, we were at somebody else doing TEDx speaking,
Yeah.
right? And we were both there. And so we're having a conversation and you started speaking life to me. The other thing that beautiful confidence does, see, ugly confidence steals the spotlight from others.
Woo!
Beautiful confidence reveals the beauty within other people.
Yes.
You were standing in front of me saying, make sure you understand your worth. Make sure you understand your value. Make sure you know how to represent. I mean, I was like, I just got a masterclass. Let's go then. Right. And so I said, well, if nothing else, I'm gonna give you a platform to speak, because I don't know if I can afford the rate you at now, speaking all over the world. Right. And so the reality is, beautiful confidence is the type of confidence that radiates the beauty in others.
Yeah,
That's what you do.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
God.
You could take it and use it. Take it and use it.
Thank you.
Because that's what I see you doing.
Thanks. That's what, you know what? And that's what being a vessel of the creator is for me. That's the definition of it. Is being able to take all the things that I have and bringing out the best in other people.
And that's what you're doing. And sometimes that means that if you're going to bring out the best in people, you have to be willing to show some of the discrepancies or even some of the worst characteristics of people, right?
Absolutely.
And so as you've tackled this particular book that you're touring with, you're letting us understand that the standards of beauty in our society and the ways that it has affected Black women, women of color. And here's why I want everybody to hear these things, because, I know that there's a mixed audience who listens to these interviews, and sometimes people can be turned off when Black people talk about Black things.
Which I don't understand.
That's a whole other conversation, right?
Yeah.
If you are a leader who's listening today, if you are yourself a trendsetter, a trailblazer, no matter what color you are, understand that your story matters, but it only matters if you understand all of the stories taking place all at once. That
Hmm.
we're all living stories. And if I blind myself, if I turn a blind eye to some of the things that are happening to people who
Yeah,
aren't me and who aren't like me, I'll
yeah,
miss such integral parts of the journey.
yeah,
And so you've found the courage to hold a new mirror and say, this is what we go through.
yeah.
My little girl's going through it now, right? She's 4 years old, and she's walking into rooms saying, I just want to be beautiful. I just want to be pretty. I don't want to leave the house today unless I look good. Daddy, do I look good today? I'm having these conversations with my 4 year old. Let's be clear. Now my 4 year old is like 4 going on 24. So she's like pretty developed. Like, but the reality is, I'm just being honest here. My little 4 year old black girl is trying to look around to understand what is the standard and measure of beauty that I'm meant to live up to. And so my wife and I understand we cannot overlook the criticality of teaching her how to walk in her authentic beauty, not to morph to some standard, not to think that changing herself in some kind of a way is going to be what is required, right? And so there's so much to it. It's a loaded conversation. I know we can't get into all the wrinkles, but what would you say is the driving force behind this book? I see that so many individuals are bringing you in because they realize they need the message.
Hmm.
What is the message that they realize that they need?
I want people to understand that the phenomenon of black hair is not about aesthetics. It's not about the beauty industry. It's about a culture of
Mm,
people. It's about a way of life. It's about how we show up in the world. It's about how we're seen in the world. It impacts our utter existence, everything about us. And I need people to understand how important that is. I want people to understand in this book, Black Hair in a White World, that black hair is so much bigger than aesthetics, so much bigger than what other people think about when they think about hair.
mm,
It's who we are. It's who it's how people recognize us. During slavery times, that was one of the descriptors. Like whenever they would put up a wanted poster, they would definitely describe skin tone and they would definitely describe skin like hair texture,
mm,
woolly hair, big woolly hair, or whatever they would say, right?
mhm.
You can't separate skin color and hair texture. You just can't.
And you also can't separate a person and their mission from the way that the person is perceived.
Absolutely.
So when a person starts
Absolutely.
walking into the fullness and the boldness of their purpose,
Yeah.
it's automatically going to have a resistance
Hmm.
because you're now shaking the foundation of other people's belief systems.
Absolutely.
Mhm,
Absolutely. And showing up as your authentic self,
mhm,
meaning that you're not adhering to westernized beauty standards. You're not, adhering to what people tell you beauty is supposed to be.
mm,
You oftentimes, there's backlash that comes with that,
mhm,
which then trickles down into low self esteem, trickles down into low performance at work because you're so worried about what you're going to look like when you show up at work. You're worried
mhm,
about whether or not your colleagues are watching you or staring at you because your hair is different today. You know, there's so many things that are wrapped up in the phenomenon of hair
mm.
that
And
we and it's not, and this book is not just for black people. This book is for everyone
for
because
everyone.
this is not just a black person's situation. To be honest, this would have never happened to us had we not had colonization,
Mm,
had we not had slavery.
mm,
All of these things would have never even happened to us. We would have been just fine, okay, loving ourselves the way that we were had we not had all these other things going on. And so this
mm.
is not just a black issue, this is a global issue. This is not an issue that just happens to African American people. Any black person around the world that is living in a country that has been colonized is dealing with these things.
So beautiful, so powerful, so important. Listen, if you guys are listening, if you're watching, do me a favor. If you haven't yet, share this with somebody. Make sure that somebody else gets this message. Right now, just because of time constraints, I know that I got to let you go. But it's absolutely not because I don't want to sit and talk to you for another
Yeah.
hour, because this has been so powerful, so amazing. So here's the last question I want to give you. Dr. Tameka, I want you to imagine that you are in a museum. It is a museum of culture. It's not you. Excuse me. It's a cultural museum. It's 100 years from now, and someone walks into a room, and the room is marked hope. And inside of that room, there are time capsules, and there is a time capsule of Dr. Tameka Ellington. Some of your books are there, and there are artifacts about you. There's pictures of you as a professor and doing some of the things you're doing and speaking to crowds. And then there's this clip, and this is the clip where you explain what hope means to you. What would you say that hope is to you?
I would say that hope is to me, and what I hope for all people, no matter if they are Black or white or Latin or whatever race they may come from. My hope is that everybody feels comfortable showing up as their authentic selves. The world will be so much better, so much easier for people to feel comfortable just being themselves and showing up and showing people who they really are. My hope is that the work that I'm doing will give people the strength to just be themselves, and to show up as their very best selves. Because not only do I promote authenticity, but I also promote excellence.
Hmm.
I'm someone who believes, especially as a person of color, there's no room for us to be mediocre.
Mhm.
And so hope for me looks like authenticity, looks like love, it looks like excellence. That's what it looks like to me.
Wow. As I hear that, that level of authenticity and the level of love that a person can bring when they embrace their one of a kind purpose in life, it leaves me feeling inspired. And for all the rest of you today, as you've been watching and listening, I hope you yourself have been inspired as well. Dr. Tameka had to run, she had to get to an interview. But what is lingering is the wisdom that she shared, the passion that she shared it with, and her heart and soul that she put on the table for all of us to really glean from. I hope that what you got out of today's conversation was about how sometimes when we stand out, it feels like we're a black sheep. People will stare at us, they may judge us, they may ridicule us because we don't quite fit into whatever the world says we're supposed to fit into. It makes me think about a scripture with in the book of Jeremiah. I'll make this really quick. I'm not going to preach no sermon to you. Jeremiah has an encounter with God, and God says, Jeremiah, I need to send you somewhere to talk to people on my behalf. And Jeremiah says, well, hold on a second. I'm too young. I could never do that. And God says, Jeremiah, don't tell me you're too young. And part of that conversation, he says, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you. I set you apart to be a prophet to the nations. He's telling Jeremiah, I knew you before you even existed on the earth. You and I already know each other, even if you don't know that. And I set you apart to stand out, to bring a message that only you can bring on my behalf. I wonder today, as you listen to this episode, as you have watched this episode, if you will allow yourself to make it personal. What is the message you were put on the earth to give? And by the way, not all messages need to be told out loud. Some messages are lived messages. The people who watch you, the people who are around you, the people who listen to you, they're getting something from the way you move and the way you live. You are a sphere of influence, whether you understand that or not. And so I wonder, are you living out that influence to its best and most powerful potential. If you're not, don't be discouraged. Take this as an opportunity to grow. Dr. Tameka said there were 2 years where she was stuck. 2 years where she was stagnant, 2 years where the imposter syndrome, feeling like a fake and a fraud, was too much. And yet, she rose beyond that. And quite frankly, she's still rising. She's affecting more and more people. And today, hopefully, she's affected you. If you have loved hearing from her and you want to hear more of what she has to say, if you want to read her books, you guys see down below, either in the description to this video or to this audio, the links to go listen to Dr. Tameka, watch Dr. Tameka, to maybe you want to book Dr. Tameka to speak. And I would encourage you, support what it is that she's doing, because it is powerful. And you're powerful as well. And so I hope that today you've been reminded that if you have been one of the rejected, if you are one of the people who nobody seems to understand, or so some people don't support, that's okay. Lean into it. Embrace it. Because sometimes when you are the only one walking in a path of resistance, you are blazing a trail for someone who comes after you. And so that is all that I have for you today. If you haven't yet, would you leave a comment with how today's interview resonated with you? If you haven't yet, have you hit review? If you're listening on a podcast, you know that people like to see reviews or ratings. They need to know that this podcast is resonating with people. Would you leave that? If you're watching on YouTube, would you subscribe today? Would you make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss any other great, powerful guests? Because we have so many more coming your way. So for now, I will see you all soon on Hope Rising, where the unfulfilled go for fulfillment and the uninspired go for their dose of inspiration. I'll see you soon.